Welcome to the 57th edition of Women's Wrestling Weekly, the show. I am Kyle Klingman, joined by Scott Beck. Scott, you asked for it last episode. What is the solution to dual meets that matter? I've come up with something. I don't know if it's feasible. I don't know if it's logical, but with the Division III schools inevitably splitting off from Division I and II, you're likely going to have a dual meet schedule that's D3 and D1, D2 hybrid. There's the reality that the NCAA will not have a dual meet championship anytime soon. I just don't think that's going to happen. So that falls on the national duels to be our hallmark event, which of course I do love. That's in early January. If we could push that back a little bit, or if it stays the same, but if you could push it back to the end of January, and then you have November, December, and most of January to have some sort of a dual meet schedule that matters. Say it's 10 to 15 dual meets for these schools. It can be individual duels at the school. It can be these hybrid where they have like the Warrior duels where you have multiple duels going on. It's a schedule that matters. And then just like the FCS or the FBS in football or the NCAA, you have a selection show because for the national duels as it stands now, they have the top 16 team gets the right to go to the national duels the following year. So it's an individual tournament that determines a team concept for the following year.
Yeah.
Selection shows are great. I think that's fun. So this would just be a way to make duels matter more than they do already. And I just think it's a great concept.
No, I think it's a good concept, and as you say, anything that can create like predictability and something for people to aspire to do and make it meaningful, I think it's good. I mean, the blowing holes is that we tend to be creatures of habit in our sport, and people don't like change a lot. So you know whatever you're going to propose or somebody else proposes, there's always going to be resistance, whether it's scheduling, whether it's money, whether it's ego, who knows? But I think it's a good concept.
And I don't know what schools can do. See, I also don't know the budgeting of schools. They may say, well, here's the reason we can't do this because we're only allowed certain dates. So if we travel to one duel, our school budget only allows for X. And that's why I think the Warrior duels, which just took place and that Lehigh won, is a good concept because you can get a lot of duels all at the same time. So maybe if you bring them all together, still like that idea of one duel, everyone gets to experience it like that, but I think if you could do that and mix and match, and then you have some sort of a selection show, maybe that could be a solution for the future.
Yeah, perhaps. I mean, anybody else bring ideas? We're an open book on this, but I think duels are great. We just have to figure out the most efficient way to create hype and energy around them because it really is a lot of fun. I mean, even like this one-off duel this weekend, the Cyhawk duel, for the men on Sunday. We've been talking about it. I've been reading about it. I mean, it's just a historical duel. Iowa State has not won in a long time. They have a shot. I'd say they're underdogs, but they have a shot. So it's but it's something to look forward to. And there's a lot of that, the rivalry aspect of duels, which is what makes them great as well.
Want to read a comment that Tony Welch made. I love Tony. He does a great job of promoting women's wrestling. First, thank you and Scott for putting the Grandview and North Central duel at the top of the show. Those ladies put on a top-notch performance. I understand that there's no postseason implications from a team standpoint, but the dual format is fan-friendly. Schools can use opportunities like this to get their communities excited and pack the stands. Agree 100%. Don't want to deviate from any of the dual meet concept. Just trying to get relevant end of the year or middle of the year in this case with the national duels, something to get people excited about the end game.
Yeah, it's interesting that he hits on that point, which we had mentioned last show. It really is. You could have two dual meets, and you can build it, and nobody could come if nobody knows it's going on or it's not in a community that has the support. But the teams that have been really successful, not just in dual meets, but in having successful programs, especially in maybe small college towns that there's not a lot going on, or it could be high schools where there's not a lot going on. It's creating community awareness, hyping the duelman, making it an event, maybe doing something fun before, or at the break or after, but just something that creates community energy, excitement, and makes people want to look forward to these dual meets and events and especially the really cool one. when they have a family friendly aspect to them as well, where you see little kids being brought, because that's the next generation, and they're going to remember being exposed to these dual mates. And I remember when I first started following wrestling, in Long Island. I was in, just started wrestling junior high school, but it was a big thing to go to a Hofstra University dual meet. Back then, they had All Americans, they had Ed Pigeon, they had Pete Capone. I mean, Nikki Gallo was a national champion OW, so it was a big thing in Long Island. A lot of younger wrestlers would go to the Hofstra dual meets and say, hey, I want to be like that guy. So it's good. It's good stuff. And now it should be, I want to be like that girl.
And once again, the world record for a women's only wrestling event was a dual meet. That says a lot there that yeah, for Carver. Now, again, the seating part, I completely understand that has implications at the NCAA championships, but it's hard to pitch that to the common fan, like get excited. Yes, that might implicate them, or that might be a big thing at the end of the year for their seating, but we won't know yet. But that was awesome. I get that
But
that's an important thing, but it's hard to really rally around.
listen, in sports, two teams may hit in the playoffs, but it's not like they don't play each other in regular season and sit every starter because people don't want to see how that guy pitches, or people put you have to get out there and compete. And I want to add one thing on the top. Thank you for that comment. Appreciate it. Kyle's gets a bunch of messages and comments and really good feedback from a bunch of folks, and many are regulars, and it's really helpful to us. But number one, we appreciate that people listen, and number two, we can hear, most of the comments are very good, and that's great. And we love the affirmation or the ideas and the continuity. But if it's bad, we'll hear that too. We just want to do the best we can. So thank you.
Sunday, December 7th, the grand experiment that is Iowa varsity D1 wrestling will face off against Oklahoma State, a club program that does not have D1 wrestling and that we hope does, and Colorado Mesa, a perennial contender that is a NCAA Division II program. They're going to have a triangular. I can tell you this. Oklahoma State has no chance in this duel. Iowa's going to absolutely smash them. They are not ready for what's going to happen, especially if Iowa uses its loaded guns. If they have Kylie Welker in the lineup, who we haven't seen yet this season, Kenny D. Blades and the like. This will be a statement win. Hopefully, it motivates Oklahoma State and they see this and they say, we don't want this to happen again, but it's not going to be pretty, Scott.
No, it won't, but I respect they're doing it. And it's obviously a rivalry in men's wrestling, and maybe at some point it will be in women's. You got to start somewhere. But, Colorado Mesa is very scrappy. I mean, Coach Mercado does a great job there, Travis Mercado, and he's got some tough wrestlers. They've never been in that top spot. He aspires to it, believes that it can be done, but they have a lot of competitors and a lot of good wrestlers, and a lot of his athletes over the years wrestle up and keep improving. So I think there will be spots where Colorado Mesa gives Iowa some fits, depending on the specific matchups.
I think if we look at this, the couple things that I'm going to be interested in. Number one, will John Smith show up? Will he be on the sideline? I think that'd be fascinating. It'd be great to have him on the sideline. That's number one. Number two, Iowa's going to beat Oklahoma State. We know that. But how does Oklahoma State and Colorado Mesa do against each other? I think this could be a statement win for Colorado Mesa, how they do, because Oklahoma State has some good depth in the program, but Colorado Mesa's been there before. I think they should really use this as a chip on their shoulder and say, we want to get a big win against Oklahoma State because they have a lot of the pop and the love. How will they do?
Yeah, I'd expect Colorado Mesa to win that match just based on depth and experience. I mean, I'm not saying that Oklahoma State can't win matches, but they have a pretty solid experience, team, and I think Travis will be very upset if he loses that dual meet. To be honest with you, I think it'll be interesting, but I think they on paper should win.
And that's why credit to the people that made this happen because this is fun. This gets us excited, gets us thinking, what can a club program who hasn't developed quite yet that we want to be D1, that if they get to that status, we know they can potentially compete with Iowa and Lehigh and North Central and Grand Valley State and King and the like. Once they get there, how will they compete? So this is just the first step.
And look, Lehigh was a club program, and the switch has been flipped, and they're immediately a good college program that will move to great soon. So, it can happen quickly, especially if you lay the pieces and you have the club waiting, and then you know that you are going to, move up at some point, you can start to get that in place.
Let's talk about the trend that we've seen of high school girls going to college opens. I know you watch all these interviews, I watch all these interviews. There's something common that gets said. It's a common thread where they say, nobody expects anything out of me anyway, so I just go and I'm going to wrestle free. I had no expectations. I didn't even think I was going to win. And then a lot of these high school girls go and win. And it can happen even with a college girl going to a senior open saying, nobody expected anything out of me anyway, so I might as well just go out there and put it on the line. That's what you should aspire to do anyway, but it's hard to get there once the expectations are there. And the expectations, I think, are a lot of what happens when we were talking about the transition from high school to college. It's now you're a Hawkeye, and the expectations are I'm supposed to win, or I've had this success and I'm supposed to do a good job at the next level. Expectations are a big part of how you transition, and it's the ones who can manage expectations the best that can perform the best.
Yeah, and it's exceptionally difficult in pretty much any endeavor in life that you have very high expectations, and you have to learn how to handle the pressure, and that's not always easy. I mean, the biggest oxymoron in the world is when somebody looks at you before a big event, whether it could be you're taking a big test to get in to become an engineer or something, whatever, or the SATs, or you're entering a competition, and as you're sitting there and you're nervous and it's game on, and then somebody looks at you and says, try and relax. Inherently, by trying to relax, you're inserting your ego and you're putting pressure on yourself by trying. So it's a process. Some are better at it than others. You can get better. Some people never really relax and never perform maybe at their best, or some are not, quote, relaxed, but still can push through it and perform at a very high level. I have these discussions all the time with my daughter. We talk about this. The other half is, we just go out there and have fun. Now it's become like a joke. If like right before match, go out there and have fun. Just give me the look of death. Like, yeah, just a blast. Go out there and have fun. Well, with high pressure, it's tough. It really is. And if you have no expectations and you're free, you know, you tend to, I mean, you can't be too free. There's got to be adrenaline. It's got to be a fight or flight, relax. You have to have that nervousness and the edge. It normally disappears right when you start, but if you don't have it at all, that's not good either. So you can't be too relaxed, loosey goosey. Yeah, but you have to learn how to manage it. um and yeah, the less expectations, the more you could trust your training maybe and just see where you are. And then all of a sudden, the other thing that happens if you start performing well or surprising yourself is when you get belief. And I've seen belief happen during matches. I've seen it happen during tournaments. Seen it happen during seasons. And I've seen people that never really believe and never perform at their potential. It's psychological, it's physical, it's environmental. Different things and tools to get a different athlete to be able to do that are very personal to what works for that athlete. A really good coach doesn't try to push the same button for every athlete. Understands when certain people want to be talked to, certain people don't. Certain people need to be left alone. Certain people need to be told about how big it is. Other people don't want to know anything about the opponent or how big it is. So it's personal. It's exceptionally difficult. The human mind is a very complicated thing, and we don't really understand it all that well.
Lee Kemp, who was a three-time world champion, he idolized Dan Gable and went to a camp. It just so happened when he went to the camp that Dan Gable chose him to show technique. I think Lee was a freshman in high school, and he said he skipped lunch so he could spy on Dan Gable and watch his every move. 5 years later, he wrestles him in the Northern Open and beats him 7-6. Lee has a great story about this, having a target on your back and the pressure he felt.
Big matches were uh, normal to me, sort of, because once you get a bullseye on your back, every match is going to be hard. You're going to be a targeted person every match, and they may not look hard to the outside world because you're winning, but it's a lot of pressure because everybody is trying to beat you. It's like being the fastest gun in the West or something. And there are people who want to knock off the top guy. I was that person. I snuck up on Gable, I think, probably. And he said, in fact, he said these words. He said, I never thought you would actually try to beat me. And that's weird. I mean, like to me, it was like I was shocked when he said that. Like, what do you mean? I didn't say that because I had reverence for him, but every time he opened his mouth, I just thought he was dropping pearls of wisdom. That's how I viewed people that knew more than me, that I respected. But just think about that again. He said, and I never thought you would actually try to beat me.
And it was a revelation because it's almost like I don't think this person's going to beat me. And I can remember that even when I was running, there was a guy I always thought I trained with him. He always beat me. I was 5 seconds away from beating him. And after the race, he said, "You should have beat me." And I was like, "Yeah, I guess I could have because I had more in the tank." But I just had that in my head that I'm not supposed to beat this person.
Well, so you didn't give yourself permission to. You didn't believe you deserved it, and you didn't allow yourself to go over that barrier. In that case, and that's the whole thing of belief. It's like allowing yourself to be great or do great things, and it's hard to have true belief. Sometimes people need to see it. Sometimes people need to be told it. Sometimes people need to feel it, and sometimes people never feel it. And it's really an art. I mean, because it's not just about winning, like always beating it. It's performing better than you are at whatever level that is, and that's mental. And I mean, it's physical, but it's mental. It's challenging in anything.
And when we go back to last show, when we talked about that 103-pound massive class at the Missouri Valley Open, we're going through each of these, and all of these ladies are quality wrestlers. They're high level, they're good, they're at the top of their game. And that's the hard part for me and potentially you is that you get to know all of these ladies and you know how good they are, and you don't want any of the six to lose. And so I know from my vantage point, I have to compartmentalize too that I don't care if they win or lose. There's certain people that you do cheer for because you build these bonds, but you have to also compartmentalize that I don't think any less of that person because that person got first or sixth place.
Well, yeah, I mean, and it's a funny thing, and this is this takes time to really realize this. Nobody, I mean, nobody really cares other than like really you, your coach, your family. Like very few people actually really care. So sometimes we make something bigger than it is. Like people put pressure and say, well, if I do poorly, what are people going to think of me? What's this? Most people aren't thinking of you. They have their own problems and their own lives to deal with. So if you can liberate yourself from this worry of perception or, and then even you say, okay, this is a wrestling match. It means a lot, but it actually is just a wrestling match. In the big, it's not nobody's living or dying, and using that to try to release pressure and say, well, maybe you're making it too big. If you could, and you need to try to be able to do that. It's easier said than done. It's exceptionally difficult because it's real to people doing it, but it's a process, and you have to work on being able to do that mentally. And just it's one of many matches. I mean, so let's say, okay, you make it so big, the biggest thing in the world. You would go talk to an Olympic gold medalist. All of a sudden, they win an Olympic gold medal. It's not like this radiant light on them, and every second of their life feels wonderful. In fact, many of them go through a period of depression. Like, okay, so I just won an Olympic gold medal. I still feel exactly the same when I go to bed. I just now have an Olympic gold medal. So it's just not always what we think it is, and we think everything's life changing. I mean, obviously, it's great to achieve your goals, but then if you take it down to a random wrestling match, so you win, okay, but then you got to win the next one, or you lose, then you got to learn from it and get better. So it's just this idea of this is a process. It's an ultra marathon, to quote Lee Miracle, and it's an art to learn how to manage that. Some people learn how to do it themselves. Again, some people work with sports psychologists, and some people never manage it.
When I look back at some of the results, I go immediately to the person because I think about Nyla Valencia. I can remember the first time I heard her in an interview, and I said, that is one of the smartest human beings I'm ever going to see on this planet. Just the way she was able to articulate herself and just her narrative and her discipline and what she has for the future and her desire to be a doctor and to be in healthcare.
Well, so I wanted to be a surgeon since I was a little girl, mainly because of my grandma. She has a weak heart, so I wanted to become a cardiothoracic surgeon to help her in that respect. And that's never really changed for me, so that's why I want to go to Stanford. It's close to home, and they have a great medical school nearby, so that's one of my main options. But I don't think that's ever going to change.
regardless of what she does at the Missouri Valley Open, she's going to be great at that next level no matter what she does.
Yeah, 100%. And even so, she lost that match at the end of the match in the Missouri Valley Open. Does that really mean anything for wrestling for this year? No. She'll learn from it, and she's great, and she's just coming back. So that match, I mean, I'm sure she's not happy she lost it, but I don't really think it means anything.
Let's apply something that just happened here. So North Central just had a dual meet win over Augustana. I hope everyone saw the striped singlets. They're so cool. They wore those in honor of Al Carius, who died earlier this year at the age of 82. He was a 31-time NCAA track and cross country championship coach. And I watched the profile that they had on him, and his mantra that he went by is run for fun and personal best. And I think you can apply that to what we're talking here. Wrestle for fun and personal best. Now, it's easier in a quantifiable sport like running where you can say, I ran this time, I can improve on that. So you have to quantify what personal best means. Maybe if you're going against Helen, it's touching her leg or taking her down once. Maybe you have to compartmentalize that and continue to get better each time. You have your own set of goals. Maybe for someone, they've never won a match, varsity match, and it's to win that varsity match. So you have to figure out what it is for you. But it's a great way to compartmentalize that. And I love that Joe Norton, who is the head coach at North Central, he did hours and hours and hours and wrote notes and notes and notes and picked Al Carius's brain because all of those principles of coaching apply to any endeavor. And I think you can apply that in some way here.
First of all, I'd say I love that they did that. Like, it caught my attention, seeing a picture with the striped singlet. So then I read a little bit about the coach. So I think events like this that are important, to learn from the great ones and to honor them and what they did. And I think it is. It's you measure things in a personal way for you. Everybody can't have the same goals, the same time frame, and again, maybe the personal best is somebody in a dual meet that helps the team win. They get 1 point while they get tacked, and that's the crucial point. You just don't know. But it's always like in anything you do. I mean, I think you try to be your best in everything. I mean, if you and I created a game where we're rolling up a paper ball, a ball out of a piece of paper and throwing it against a wall, I'd be so competitive you wouldn't imagine. I mean, you want to do your best in anything you do.
I love it though. I love that they took the initiative to make those singlets because it does come out. And the one thing in watching that documentary was that these high level coaches, these championship coaches, they ooze this charisma. And there's just something when you watch it, you feel it and you just say, I understand. I can't really verbalize it, but I understand how they were so successful because they just drip with this confidence and this charisma, and you believe in the philosophy and you don't know why. It's an amazing thing.
Yeah, I mean, because they're true leaders, and it's not a cult. It's a congregation. It becomes like a religious leader to some extent, almost, where you have a flock of people that believe in you because of the lesson and the lessons being taught. I promise you, by this coach, knowing nothing up until what I just read, the lessons aren't just personal best in track and field. These are, I'm sure, life lessons in being better people, better students, better family members. And it's funny. I'm looking at the singlets, and this just popped in my head when I was doing it. I'm sitting there and saying, this is really cool that they did this because, a school like North Central doesn't have infinite resources, and it costs money to create new singlets for this event, and I don't know if they fundraise, whatever they did, but it was important enough to I don't say waste, but to spend money to do that as a statement also impressed me with, limited resources for university.
You feel that when you're around that person, your personality changes. You feel elevated, and you can tell that with championship coaches. I feel that around those coaches that are high level. You feel different when you're in that moment because they're raising your level. It's a cool thing.
Yeah. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to meet Coach Gable, who was, an idol.
Hello, Scott Beck. Dan Gable here. I'll tell you what, I do a lot for wrestling, but so do you. And I appreciate you for that fact. You even have family in it, a daughter, and she came out here. I even appreciate that more. So, you know what? Don't let up now because we're just beginning.
When I was younger, and I've met him a couple times. I remember one time I was out I don't know if it's a dual meet or something in Iowa City, and I'm flying back, and Coach Gable's sitting, in the airport. He's on the same flight as me, and I sit down next to him. We're talking a little bit, but it's like they're just so elevated. And as anyone that's watched this podcast knows, I don't have a problem speaking, but it's very hard to speak to Dan Gable because you're in awe, and you just want to listen, number one, but number two, you just don't want to sound trivial or trite, even though he's a real person. It's just so elevated, you could just feel the presence.
And everyone wants to say, oh, they're just normal guys or a normal person. No, Helen Maroulis isn't normal. John Smith isn't normal. Dan Gable isn't normal. These high-level coaches, they are not normal. What they do and what they are able to get out of people, it's not normal. It's anything but.
Yeah, they're special people for sure. And they wouldn't be where they were if they weren't.
Simon Fraser, after the 2027 season, will no longer be an NCAA program. They are in Burnaby, British Columbia. It's the only Canadian program to be in the NCAA, and that will be no
It
longer.
ain't so, Kyle.
I know. They're going to go back, likely going to go to the U Sports Division, which is Canada's equivalent to the NCAA. And if you look at the history, Simon Fraser Women's Wrestling has been one of the leaders. They won the championship, WCW championships in 2013 under Mike Jones. It's a who's who: Helen Maroulis, Victoria Anthony, Dom Parrish, Mallory Velty. You just go down the line, Justina DeStasio, just a list, and we'll put the list here of all of the great wrestlers that have come through the program.
And Justin Abud is the coach now, who's an Olympian, has a win over Cale Sanderson. I love hearing that story from him, and is a junkie student of the sport. Yeah, I mean, it came down to money, Kyle, like everything else, right? I think it's just gonna save them a lot of money. That resources are tight across the board.
We are going to appreciate having them the next 2 seasons, but we can remember the great wrestlers that have been in Simon Fraser program. And again, we'll put the list here of who has been in the program. So Simon Fraser will be no more in the NCAA, and we will not see them at the NCAA championships after the 27 season. So we got to appreciate it while they're in there in 26 and 27. And we're going to end with this. Speaking of programs, we're going to do this for a while. We're going to just bring up a program that you've never heard of. And the first one is a Division III program in Altoona, Pennsylvania. Penn State-Altoona. They have 4 wrestlers on the team right now, and they're coached by Brenton Symington. So he has 4 wrestlers on the team. I don't know if they have the idea of expanding, but I think it's cool when you just hear about programs that you'd never hear of that have a women's wrestling program. So education is key. They have 4 women's wrestlers on the team, and none of them are from Pennsylvania. They have 1 from the UK, 1 from Connecticut, and 1 from North Carolina. Penn State-Altoona, we're happy you have a program.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, being an East Coast person, I actually have shockingly heard of that university. I have, but we're going to touch on many I'm sure I haven't, because half of the schools I haven't even heard of before wrestling. But good for them. That's great. Maybe one day we'll have a Penn State College Park, program. Might not be a bad idea, but that's great that at least the satellite schools have them. And good luck to those wrestlers and coach.